Welcome to the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast, brought to you by Visant Consulting, where we discuss topics related to all things pharmacy compliance. Now, please welcome your host, board-certified compounding pharmacist, Seth DePasquale.
Hello, pharmacy friends and colleagues, and welcome to another episode of the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast. This week on the podcast, we have Lilit Smith. Lilit is a board-certified sterile compounding pharmacist and is currently the manager of compounding and compliance at Baptist Health, South Florida. In her role, she supports across the pharmacy enterprise with cleanroom design and construction, regulatory compliance, and process and policy standardization. Lilit is a pharmacist that definitely wears many hats and has her hands in a lot of different projects related to compounding. I was having a conversation with her before a webinar we did recently, and she was talking about a compliance team that she has put together for her health system. I thought it would be an excellent topic for the podcast, and I was really excited. I feel like if there's anything that's missing in health system pharmacy and compounding pharmacy in general, it's a dedicated team that focuses on quality and compliance. So with that, I'd like to welcome Lilit Smith to the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast. Hey, Lilit, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Seth. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Absolutely welcome. We've been on a couple webinars together, and it's been great to get to know you. We have sort of complementary experiences in compliance. You in health system pharmacy, and me in sort of like the independent owned compounding pharmacy. So it's always a great conversation. You and I could probably have multiple podcasts together to talk about a whole bunch of different things. But we'll focus today on what I originally said. So to start, why don't you explain where and why you saw a need for a compliance team?
So I started at Baptist Health about 3.5 years ago, and it was a really great time to join the organization because just a couple of months before that, Baptist had hired a brand new chief pharmacy officer, and we were really going through a reorganization. So I sort of came in with a lot of my own ideas and visions of what compounding in a large organization could be like, and I've had a lot of support. But basically, as far as why we saw the need, so when I first came in, again, it was a very disjointed pharmacy. Even though we had an organization, a lot of the hospitals hadn't really formed those relationships, so we didn't have a lot of the standardized processes, so we didn't have standardized policies. And really, everybody was sort of doing their own thing under one umbrella. So when I started to evaluate our clean rooms, both from like a structural perspective, but also from a process perspective, workflow, anything you can think of, we just started to see that there was a lot of, differences amongst the sites. So that was sort of the starting point of, hey, we really need to make a change. We need to standardize what we do. So at that point is when I started to work on some of the policies, started to get groups together, talking, all of the different hospitals, so that we could sort of come to a consensus of what do we need to do, and we need to really make sure that we're doing the right things and doing the same things, right? Because we're all ultimately one organization. It doesn't make sense for a regulating body to come down and say, hey, why are you doing something different than this other site? So that was sort of how it all started. But then it was pretty quickly evident that we really needed to have better processes. And originally, my thought had been, it would be really great to take a lot of the some of the responsibilities off of the actual sites. And what I mean by responsibilities is that, I think anybody who works in a hospital who's listening to this podcast knows, every time those annual validations come around, you're either having to pull a whole bunch of your own staff to test each other, or maybe if you're, your operations manager or your operations supervisor sort of disappears for a month to do all of the personnel validations. Some of the bigger hospitals that are 500 or 1,000, you might be doing validations for like 2 months, depending on how many people you're testing. So it was a huge time burden, right? And then to top it all off, all of our monthly cleanings, right, the whole wall, ceilings, and all of that was being done by an outside company, right? They were hired to come in and do it. But I would start seeing, hey, these people are cleaning some really big rooms in maybe like 2 hours or 3 hours. And, that's not possible. And having scrubbed some of these rooms on my hands and knees, you just know how long it really takes to do a good job, right? So that was sort of one aspect of it. And then obviously, we've been waiting with bated breath for years now, but the USP 797 revision has always been like looming, right? And we've known that they want to increase the amount of personnel testing, but they also want to increase their room testing, right? They're going to put that, hey, you need to test your room monthly. Hey, you need to test your people. At first, I think it was quarterly for category 2, and now they're saying semi-annually. But regardless, it basically doubles the amount of validation. So it was just sort of one thing after another. And it came to a point where I said, I think we would really benefit from a program that could own a lot of this. Own it and remove the bias, remove the burden, come in to help and educate and audit and teach and do some of the things and, be done by experts and not sort of, have a lot of variation. So that was sort of the brainchild, I guess. And it sort of evolved from there.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you and the team monitor and, how did you figure out like how you wanted the team to function and what you wanted to monitor?
Sure. So, we are, just to sort of, full transparency, the program is very new. So, the program started basically within this past year, right, as we were getting, over one of our peaks of COVID, and our first quality assurance technician actually onboarded in May of 2021. So it's very recent. But having said that, we've been working through the details of what this project was going to be for a long time. So as far as what we monitor, we do a few different things. So right now we do on-site audits, and anytime we are on site to do our monthly cleanings or any type of a cleaning, there's automatically audits happening, both for personnel and for physical issues, and you see things like if there was a leak, or if maybe the cleaning isn't being done right, or you want to make sure that medications are properly labeled with beyond use dates, everything that you would see that you want to do as a manager, but maybe you don't have time, you sort of have these external eyeballs. So that's one of it. And then the other thing that we are planning on doing that we haven't yet started is going to be the environmental monitoring. We're planning on doing taking over all of the monthly surface sampling. We haven't launched that yet, but we're working through the details, as well as the semi-annual or potentially more frequently air sampling. That is sort of part of the plan. The other thing we've taken over, or we're in the midst of taking over, we're somewhat of the way there, is all of the personnel testing and standardizing all of that.
Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
So how many people do you have dedicated to doing all of these things? And how, I guess, another question on top of that is, how many hospitals are we talking about that you're overseeing, and how many people are on the team that are watching over all these things?
Yeah. So right now, we're 11 hospitals. So it's quite a way, and we're down all the way from the Florida Keys up through 2 other counties. So We span quite a ways, and we actually recently just opened up a little hospital too that has a little sort of glove box / segregated compounding area. So we're definitely growing, and the number of clean rooms that we have are growing, because not only do we have hospitals, but we have ambulatory infusion centers, and then we have oncology infusion centers. So we've definitely got a lot going on, and some of our hospitals have multiple clean rooms too. I want to say we're at 24 clean rooms right now.
Wow.
But I'd probably have to start counting again, but I'm pretty sure we're right around 24. So right now we have two technicians, but we're not fully expanded. To get the program growing, I did have to, do a business proposal to sort of validate the numbers, validate the value, really do that justification on the ROI. So the plan will be to recruit one more FTE in this fiscal year 2022. And then the group should be 3 people. And then we're going to really fully expand across Baptist. I want to say at this point, we're probably maybe 75% there, but we haven't launched all of our programs. One of the things actually I should mention that I'm really, truly excited about is part of the program that we're doing right now is we're also doing education and training in our technician training program. I mean, I know everybody is having tech shortages right now. Some areas of the country are much worse than others. And our goal, we have a brand new tech program that started this past year. And our goal is really to have these technicians, or soon to be technicians, trained and all of aseptic technique, not just through videos, not just through, anything didactic, but hands-on training with saline, but with vials and every single thing you can think of, full training and media fills, and, a few weeks of it where somebody is overseeing that entire process. Our quality assurance technicians are overseeing our entire process. And I hopefully, we get to grow some really good technicians, and we get to bring people onboarded a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently, but that's also a big part of the program. But anyway, so the ROI was obviously like a huge portion of it. So at this point, we'll have 3 in this fiscal year. We'll expand as much as possible, and then we'll just have to sort of reevaluate and say, hey, are we meeting all the things that we said we would, or do we need to potentially consider recruiting a 4th person?
So you have people that are, sort of, at one organizational level. Do you have people that are at each individual site as well that are tasked with some of these things?
Yeah, so I mean, each site, so ultimately the way it works in the state of Florida, obviously all the directors of pharmacy are responsible for their sites, right? But there's, not every state has this, but you also have to have a consultant of record. So whoever has you have to have a special license then when you get your sterile compounding permit in Florida. So it's definitely interesting. But anyway, so you have to have a couple of different responsible parties. But normally the day-to-day management of the IV room has fallen on either an operations supervisor or an operations manager. So they have to do any type of a rollout. They obviously have to monitor, their daily cleanings. We can't always be there. They work with me directly when it comes to corrective action plans, if we have to do any type of remediation. So all those sort of things. So each site does have a lead, but they're not necessarily dedicated to the IV room. It's just a portion of what they do, which is why it was so important for us to really get a group together that was dedicated to compounding, and specifically sterile compounding.
Yeah. I'm trying to put the picture of the organizational structure of the whole thing,
Sure.
to give people sort of a visual. But what are some of the hurdles that you had to overcome along the way?
So because the program is new, I think we still have a lot of hurdles to go through. But the big things are, I think, I mentioned how, hey, I was thinking the cleaning shouldn't take this long. Well, I was absolutely right. I think when we started doing it and doing it properly, and my first hire, she's been absolutely fantastic. She's meticulous. I think the cleanings actually take even longer than I had originally projected. So that's, I think there's rooms that are cleaned basically for 3 days. And again, some of our rooms are very, very large, but it takes a significant amount of time. So I think you have to think about, hey, about employee satisfaction, right? We all know how hard it is to get technicians. One of the things I do want to emphasize is that to be hired for a position like this, you have to have a significant amount of experience in compounding and sterile compounding. And, it takes a certain caliber of person, right? This is an advanced role for our pharmacy technicians. We really want to make it, I guess, high quality program, so we can't have them cleaning all the time. So we have to balance that. Cleaning is really, really important. The recruitment, I would say, is another big one, and it really just goes hand in hand, right? It's really hard to recruit for anybody right now, and to hire really, really good people to grow the program is going to be critical. So I would say right now, that's probably the biggest challenge, finding the absolute right people. We're very lucky. I have 2 amazing people, but I'm wondering how hard it'll be to recruit for that third one.
Yeah. You really have to have the people with the right mindset that are very meticulous, that are going to go in with an eye to kind of catch things and be a little bit critical of the team and the facilities themselves. So yeah, it definitely takes a special person to kind of have an eye for these sort of things. So I hear you. I know this has only been running for a short period of time, but have you seen any impacts so far since the implementation of the compliance team?
Yeah, I think so. So first of all, we get a lot of really incredible feedback from the sites themselves. They find our technicians to be very, very helpful. They find them to be very knowledgeable. They've escalated issues if something needed to be escalated quickly, versus sort of, hey, how do we balance, and then reach back out to me. So I think that we've had to step in some really tough scenarios with staff training and staff validations, things that we weren't necessarily anticipating doing. So right off the bat, and everybody's really stepped up. So I would say that this is an extremely, extremely well-received program from the site managers and the site directors. We like to think of ourselves as internal consultants. Because really our goal is to be able to go in and audit and do all of those things, but still build those relationships and be able to sort of give that feedback and make those changes, but be looked at in sort of a positive manner. So I think that's been a really big thing. I want to say, I haven't done the tracking for it because it hasn't even been a full year. I want to say overall our validations do look much better. I think that if we do have any type of excursions or out of spec results, they tend to be more personnel related. Mm-hmm. More touch contamination than maybe from a lack of actually their rooms being cleaned properly or anything like that. So I think that's been really, really valuable too.
Yeah. I think metrics, of course, in this type of like quality and compliance team, metrics are going to be really huge to kind of keep track of and sort of validate what you're doing yourself. And so, yeah, I think keeping an eye on particular metrics is going to be really important for you going forward.
Absolutely. And, actually, just one thing to sort of point out too, if anybody's thinking about this, or if anybody had a similar structure, I mentioned earlier that we have an external vendor coming in to do the cleaning. So at least for, more than half of our sites, right? So by eliminating that contract, we were able to, save some of that money, which is how we were able to start off some of the program and, very quickly. right? From an ROI perspective, and trying to stay like net neutral, at least over like a 5-year period. Because again, if you're able to take over your own validations, if you're able to take over your own sampling, that can also save you quite a bit of money if you're currently doing that with an external vendor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Last question for you. What recommendations do you have for someone else that might be in a similar role that wants to start their own quality assurance or compliance team?
I think you have to have a vision, right? And then I think you need to put together a business proposal that needs to be, pretty well thought out with some very legitimate numbers, because at least, it depends on the organization. But if there's a financial benefit, or if there's a quality benefit with a net neutral financial impact, you're going to be able to, roll this out much faster than if you just say, hey, I want to hire 5 people and buy a bunch of equipment. I would say that's absolutely the biggest thing. And then, talk to your leaders, but data talks, and details really do a lot of that work and have that conversation for you. Nobody can sort of argue with you if you have a whole bunch of money saved, or by rolling out a program like this.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Lilit, thank you so much. It's been great. Like I said before, we could kind of nerd out on a whole bunch of different compounding topics. So I might have to have you on again for another topic.
Yeah, I would love to.
This was really great. Thank you so much for all the information. And I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Seth. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for the Pharmacy Inspection Podcast. If you have a question or compliance-related issue, reach out to us at Visant Consulting. We can help with all kinds of compliance-related issues, from 340B to drug diversion to compounding. Let us be your guide to help you raise the bar in your own pharmacy practice. At Visant, we're all about transforming healthcare through pharmacy. Everyone on our team brings many years of experience, deep expertise, and a steadfast commitment to help you achieve high performance in all aspects of pharmacy. Visit us at visantinc.com to learn more. That's VISANTEINC.com.